Most people live as if life hands out permission slips. They wait for the universe to stamp them approved. A repeating number on a clock, a chance conversation, a coincidence that feels cinematic. That habit is deceptively comfortable because it defers responsibility. If I wait, then I cannot fail. But waiting is not prudence. It is abdication. It converts time into a storage room of potential that never leaves the shelf. Think of a scientist in the lab who expects nature to reveal truths only when conditions are perfect. Discovery rarely waits for perfect conditions. It emerges when someone chooses an experiment and accepts the messy results. Life is the same. External coincidences are not the starting gun. They are the applause that sometimes follows action. To treat them as prerequisites is to invert cause and effect. You look for signs to justify action, when the real causal chain runs the other way. Action produces signs. There is a cognitive trap here. When you outsource permission to the outer world, you train your nervous system to expect external confirmation before moving. That trains a subtle form of inertia. Your decision-making apparatus becomes a receiver waiting for a clear signal, rather than an engine producing one. Meanwhile, other people, quiet, decisive actors, are taking imperfect steps and in doing so generating the very confirmations you wanted to see. The world is redistributed to those who act, not to those who wait. This is not a call to impulsivity. The remedy to sign chasing is disciplined calibration. Replace "I will act when I see a sign" with a single internal test: coherence. Does this choice align across your thinking, your feeling, and the smallest plausible action you can take? If yes, treat the micro-action as the experiment. Move, observe, adjust. The external signs will either appear as feedback or they won't, but either outcome supplies information you can use. That is how a life becomes measurable and improvable. There is also a social and practical truth. Many signs are social echoes of prior movement. Doors open because someone committed. A mentor reaches out because you showed up. An opportunity arises because you prepared for it. When you wait for a sign, you often wait for somebody else's ripple to wash over you. If you became the ripple, the delay evaporates. Finally, consider the physics metaphor. A compass does not give you a map, it gives direction. It requires you to take steps and readjust. Signs are like distant landmarks you hope to see before you move. Coherence is the compass that points you forward even when the landscape is fogged. The difference between those who live forward and those who live in expectation is simple. The former choose, test, and iterate. The latter pause for confirmation and accumulate regret. Act with calibrated courage. Treat intuition as data, not decree. Create small experiments that force feedback. When you stop mistaking coincidence for permission, the quiet map inside you becomes visible, and the life you sought begins to assemble itself around the choices you made. Science has given us telescopes to peer into galaxies billions of light years away, to witness stars being born and others collapsing into silence. But for all the progress we've made in looking outward, most people never master the equal and arguably more important art of looking inward. Because just as the telescope reveals hidden constellations, an inner telescope reveals the unseen coordinates of your own life. When you depend only on what you can see outside, approval, opportunities, validation, your map becomes unstable. The outer world is noisy, inconsistent, and always shifting. But when you turn the lens inward, you discover that the clearest data is not in the randomness of events, but in the alignment of your inner compass. The frantic search for proof dissolves once you realize that the proof you're chasing is already written in the language of your deepest instincts, your values, your quiet knowing. Imagine a sailor with no stars to guide him. If he waits for daylight or for someone to hand him a map, he is stuck. But if he knows how to read the compass in his hand, he can set sail even in the darkest night. That compass is your inner telescope. It doesn't scream, it whispers. It doesn't rush, it steadies. It won't show you every outcome in advance, but it will point you faithfully toward your next true step. The challenge is that most of us have drowned out this signal. We are addicted to outside noise, scrolling for affirmation, waiting for someone else's green light, comparing our pace to theirs. But the inner telescope demands stillness. It asks you to stop running from yourself long enough to see that clarity is not out there to be discovered, but in here to be uncovered. Think about the moments in your life when you felt most alive, most aligned. Maybe it was a decision that didn't make logical sense to others but felt absolutely undeniable to you. Maybe it was the moment you walked away from something that looked safe but suffocated your soul. In those moments, you were not chasing signs. You were observing inwardly with precision. That was your telescope focusing. That was your truth rising above the static. When you observe inwardly, doubt doesn't disappear, but it loses control. Fear doesn't vanish, but it no longer dictates. Because the inner telescope shows you that emotions are weather, temporary and passing, while your compass is magnetic, steady, unwavering. You stop being a victim of outside randomness and become the astronomer of your own existence, charting paths others cannot see. So stop asking life to shout instructions at you. Stop waiting for stars to align in the sky. You already carry a telescope that reveals alignment within. The more you use it, the clearer the picture becomes. And once you learn to trust it, you no longer need frantic searching for proof. Because the clearest proof is the certainty that lives inside you. When most people hear the word intuition, they imagine something mystical, unexplainable, almost magical. They think of it as a hunch, a gut whisper from nowhere. But intuition is not some floating mystery. It's mathematics operating beneath awareness. It is pattern recognition at scale. The brain's ability to process layers of experience, observation, and memory faster than logic can assemble them into words. Think of a chess master. They don't spend 10 minutes analyzing each move. They glance at the board and feel what's right. That feeling is not magic. It's millions of stored patterns firing instantly, calculations compressed into a sensation. Intuition is the mathematics of lived experience, coded into your nervous system, delivered in the language of feeling. Here's where people get it wrong. They either dismiss intuition as unreliable emotion, or they worship it without testing. The truth lives in between. Intuition is data, but like all data, it needs calibration. If you've spent years reinforcing fear, your gut might simply echo avoidance. If you've spent years practicing courage, your gut amplifies discernment. Intuition is like a formula. It outputs results depending on the variables you've been feeding it, and this is where the real power comes in. You can refine intuition the way a scientist refines an experiment. Instead of waiting for a perfect hunch, treat intuition like a hypothesis. Test it with small, low-risk actions. If it proves accurate, the formula strengthens. If it misfires, you gather feedback, recalibrate, and improve. Over time, your inner mathematics becomes sharper, faster, and more reliable than analysis alone. Think about driving a car. The first time, every movement is conscious, hands stiff, eyes darting. But after enough repetition, your body predicts patterns before you consciously notice them. You slow down before danger even appears, you merge smoothly without thinking. That's intuition in motion. The same process applies to business, relationships, creativity, every domain of life. The more you train, the more precise your inner calculations become. This is liberating because it means intuition is not luck, it's skill. You don't have to treat it as mystical, you can cultivate it. You can feed it with knowledge, sharpen it with reflection, and test it with action. Over time, the quiet tug in your chest becomes a trusted mathematician, faster than logic but no less accurate. The tragedy is that most people never test it. They feel the nudge, doubt it, dismiss it, and then look back years later realizing that gut call was right. The signs were there, but they lacked the courage to validate them. Courage, not coincidence, is the bridge that turns intuition into wisdom. So stop asking whether intuition is real. It is real. It is your brain's most advanced calculation system. The better question is, are you feeding it the right variables? Are you testing its output with small experiments? Are you willing to trust its equations long enough to see them verified in action? When you do, intuition stops being a vague feeling and becomes what it truly is. Mathematics, precision, guidance at scale. Not mysticism, mastery. At every moment, your life is surrounded by possibility, infinite directions, infinite outcomes. Every choice you make, every decision you commit to, collapses that endless horizon into one path, one reality. This isn't just poetic language, it's the mechanics of existence itself. Science tells us that particles in the quantum field exist in multiple states until observed. Possibilities hover, potential floats. But the moment of observation, when coherence is introduced, the wave collapses into a particle. That is not mysticism. That is physics, and the same principle echoes in your daily life. Your indecision leaves reality suspended. You hover between careers, between relationships, between dreams and doubt. The potential exists, but it remains unformed. It is only when you bring coherence, when your intention stops scattering in 1,000 directions and focuses like a laser, that the world responds. That is when possibility collapses into form. That is when reality bends. Think about water droplets on a drum. If the vibration is chaotic, the droplets scatter in every direction. But when the vibration is coherent, when rhythm and frequency align, the water arranges into intricate, beautiful patterns. Your mind and your choices work the same way. Scattered intention produces scattered results. Coherent intention produces order, beauty, progress. Most people never reach coherence. They want one thing, fear another, halfway commit, then backtrack. Their energy sends mixed signals into the field. I want this, but maybe not. I'll try, but only if it's safe. I'll move forward, but only if the sign appears. This is incoherence, and incoherence delays collapse. The field doesn't respond to hesitation. It waits for clarity. The moment you choose with coherence, the delay ends. Think of a time when you decided with absolute certainty, not maybe, not let's see, but yes, and suddenly doors opened, people appeared, events aligned. That was not luck. That was coherence collapsing possibility into reality. Coherence is not blind faith. It is alignment. Your thoughts, emotions, and actions pointing in the same direction. When you say you want something but secretly doubt it, there is no coherence. When you declare a goal but act in contradiction, there is no coherence. But when your words, your feelings, and your actions vibrate as one frequency, the collapse is immediate. Reality must respond because you've given it no other option. This is why half-hearted effort never works. Trying without deciding keeps you circling in probability, never stepping into reality. The universe does not reward maybe. It responds to coherence. So the question becomes, what outcome do you want to collapse? Which possibility will you compress into the physical world through clarity of intention? Stop waiting for the external signal. The signal is your choice. The moment you choose in full coherence, probability becomes reality. Possibility bows to decision. And here's the truth. Life does not bend to scattered desire. It bends to coherent commitment. Your body is not simply flesh and bone carrying you through space. It is not a passenger. It is an antenna, an exquisitely tuned instrument designed to detect signals from the field of possibility. Every sensation you feel, every shift in mood, every rhythm of your physiology is feedback. It is your nervous system broadcasting and receiving, aligning and signaling what reality you are about to collapse into existence. Think about it. Long before your logical mind explains a situation, your body already knows. You feel a tightening in your chest before walking into the wrong room. You sense a calm expansion before saying yes to the right opportunity. These are not random quirks of biology. These are signals. Your nervous system is wired to translate probability into feeling. Science gives us clues. The gut is packed with neurons, sometimes called the second brain. It communicates constantly with your head, shaping mood, decision, instinct. The heart has its own electromagnetic field, measurable and strong enough to influence those around you. Your skin, your muscles, your very posture shifts in response to unseen cues. This is not mysticism. This is physiology behaving like an antenna, receiving and broadcasting at once. The problem is that most people ignore these signals. They dismiss the knot in their stomach as just nerves. They push through the fatigue, override the subtle intuition, and then wonder why reality feels misaligned. But if the nervous system is an antenna, ignoring it is like turning the dial away from the station and then complaining about static. Here's the shift. Begin to treat your sensations as data. Instead of brushing off the quickened heartbeat or the inexplicable calm, ask, what is my body trying to broadcast? What is it telling me about this path, this person, this choice? You will start to notice that your body is often ahead of your mind. It predicts, it senses. It alerts you to probabilities before your logic has time to calculate them. This is why coherence matters so much. When your nervous system is scattered with stress, flooded with doubt, or numbed by overstimulation, the antenna jams, the signal weakens. But when you regulate your body, through stillness, breath, focus, you amplify the signal. You bring the antenna back into alignment and suddenly the feedback becomes clear. Calmness becomes clarity. Excitement becomes confirmation. Resistance becomes warning. If you learn to listen, your nervous system becomes a compass. always broadcasting the path of greatest resonance. But this requires trust. Most of us are trained to ignore the body in favor of endless analysis. Yet logic alone can only calculate from the past. The nervous system, acting as antenna, draws from probabilities in the present field. It is faster, sharper, more alive. So here is the truth: your body is not a bystander. It is your most advanced instrument of navigation. Every sensation is a signal. Every mood is a frequency. Every physiological shift is the antenna pulling data from possibility into the present. Ignore it and you walk blind. Trust it and you walk aligned. Your next reality is already being broadcast through your body. The question is, are you listening? Most people treat decisions like abstract ideas, thoughts that live in the head, invisible, intangible. But here's the truth: every decision is a physical act. It doesn't stay trapped in your skull. It radiates outward like ripples in water, reorganizing the fabric of your life. Science shows us that observation changes matter. A particle behaves differently the moment it is measured. In the same way, your decision alters the trajectory of reality, not because of magic, but because of mechanics. Choice compresses infinite possibility into one timeline. The instant you decide, you collapse probability into form. That is not philosophy. It's physics echoing through your daily life. Think about what happens in your body when you truly decide. The nervous system shifts. Muscles tighten with readiness. The heartbeat steadies or quickens. Hormones flood the bloodstream, signaling the body to prepare for action. This is not just thinking. This is physiology locking onto a course. Your decision is encoded in the very cells of your body before it reshapes the external world. But here's the catch: most people never actually decide. They think about deciding. They debate. They hesitate. They circle around the possibility without collapsing it. And in that limbo, nothing changes. Life remains a blur of maybes and somedays. But the moment you decide with clarity, when thought becomes commitment, energy shifts. Resources line up. People respond. Circumstances bend. Consider this. When you step off the curb to cross the street, cars respond. The environment reorganizes because you committed to motion. The same principle applies to bigger choices. When you decide to launch the business, to write the book, to leave the job, to commit fully, the world responds to that physical act. The decision itself is an announcement. It broadcasts to reality, this is the path, and reality adjusts. That is why hesitation is so costly. Indecision keeps your energy scattered, broadcasting contradictory signals. You want change, but you delay. You crave movement, but you wait for proof. And in doing so, you prevent the collapse. Nothing solidifies because you haven't chosen. The strongest people are not the ones who analyze endlessly. They are the ones who understand that decisions are not perfect, they are powerful. They don't wait for every variable to line up. They choose, and that choice becomes the catalyst for alignment. Your decision is not invisible. It is a force. It sends ripples through your body, through your relationships, through your environment. It is not simply an inner statement, it is an outer signal, a trigger that reorganizes probability into reality. So the question is not, what do you think you want? The question is, what are you willing to decide right now? Because the instant you decide, your world changes. The moment you collapse hesitation into coherence, the ripples spread, and those ripples are strong enough to bend the future. We live in a world addicted to noise. Notifications ping, conversations overlap, news cycles scream for attention, and somewhere in that endless storm, the most important signals are drowned out. Not because they're weak, but because we have tuned the volume of the external world so high that the internal frequency cannot be heard. Yet silence, true intentional stillness, is not emptiness. It is the laboratory where insight is born. Think of a scientist in a lab. To discover, to measure, to understand, they need control over the environment. Random interference ruins the experiment. The same principle applies to you. Your life is the experiment. Your nervous system is the instrument. And silence is the controlled environment where you begin to detect signals too subtle for the noise of ordinary living. Stillness is not passive. It is active refinement. It is the deliberate choice to withdraw from distraction so that the small but powerful frequencies of intuition can be heard. When you sit in silence, you are not doing nothing. You are aligning the antenna of your nervous system, stabilizing the signal, and amplifying clarity. Practical wisdom confirms this. Some of the most groundbreaking insights in history arrived not during frantic activity, but in moments of stillness. A walk alone, a quiet evening, the pause between actions, these became laboratories for revelation. Ideas that had been hidden by noise suddenly emerged, complete and clear. Not by force, but by the natural unfolding that silence makes possible. Here's the irony. Many fear silence. They avoid it because it feels uncomfortable, even threatening. The mind races, restlessness builds, discomfort rises. But that is the detox, the clearing of interference. Stay long enough and the static fades. What remains is signal. And signal is what changes your life. So how do you cultivate this laboratory inside you? Begin with minutes, not hours. Set aside moments where no phone, no screen, no distraction enters. Breathe, observe. Listen not to the outer world, but to the subtle shifts within. Pay attention to the rise and fall of your breath, the sensation of calm that grows, the thought fragments that surface and settle. This is training your inner scientist to recognize the quiet frequency beneath the noise. Silence sharpens intuition. It strengthens coherence. It heightens awareness. When you return from silence, you act not from panic or impulse, but from insight. You begin to notice opportunities others miss. You feel directions others doubt. You walk into rooms with clarity others cannot understand because they are still drowning in static. Make no mistake, silence is not retreat, it is preparation. It is the lab where the formula of your future is tested and refined. The world will always try to flood you with noise, but your advantage will come from creating silence, entering it, and letting it reveal the signals already present within you. Noise is everywhere. Stillness is rare, but stillness is where your next breakthrough lives. The beauty of truth is that it doesn't remain abstract. It shows itself when tested. Real change is not about lofty theories or distant ideals. It's about experiments you can run today. Experiments so small they seem almost insignificant, yet when repeated, they reshape the architecture of your reality. Small choices become the levers that shift the entire system. Think about the mechanics of an experiment. You introduce a variable, observe the outcome, refine and repeat. You don't need to guess, you don't need blind faith, you gather evidence. And evidence builds belief faster than inspiration ever could. That's why the most powerful breakthroughs in your life will not come from hearing more words, but from running the experiments yourself. So let's start small. Imagine you choose just for one day to begin every conversation by listening instead of speaking. That simple decision seems minor, but watch what unfolds. People open up. Trust deepens. Opportunities for influence emerge not because you pushed harder, but because you adjusted the smallest variable, your starting point. That's a measurable shift. Or take your nervous system. Tomorrow morning, before touching your phone, try a 2-minute breathing experiment. No elaborate ritual, just 2 minutes of deliberate inhale, exhale, attention anchored. Measure your day after that. You'll notice stress softens, focus sharpens, decisions feel cleaner. The input was tiny, the output was exponential. This is the mathematics of transformation. Repetition of small intentional choices compounds into seismic outcomes. Every time you run an experiment, you're training your nervous system, your intuition, your mind to recognize what works and discard what doesn't. Over time, you build not just habits, but evidence. And evidence eliminates doubt. Another experiment. Reframe failure. Instead of asking, did I succeed or fail? Ask, what did this teach me? Try that for a week. Suddenly, setbacks lose their sting. You stop fearing mistakes because every outcome, good or bad, feeds the lab of your life. That one mental reframe shifts your relationship with risk and with it, your capacity to act boldly. The key is measurability. Don't leave it vague. Track your sleep after silence before bed. Track your energy after gratitude in the morning. Track your confidence after making decisions quickly, rather than delaying them. Treat your life like a living lab, where the data is collected not on paper but in the quality of your day-to-day existence. Small choices are experiments. Experiments create evidence. Evidence builds certainty. Certainty fuels momentum. And momentum changes everything. If you want to collapse the distance between where you are and where you could be, don't wait for a massive leap. Start with micro-adjustments, repeatable, observable, testable. They don't just add up, they multiply. In science, the smallest shifts produce the largest breakthroughs. In life, the principle is the same. Test it, prove it. Live it,